I used to educate my participants about the human brain, in that it is not just consisting of one brain but actually multiple brains. For example, our oldest brain is the lizard brain that controls our reflexes and our day-to-day functions such as breathing. Our middle brain is also known as our monkey brain, which controls our emotions such as anger, joy, happiness, and whatnot. Then we have our youngest brain, which is the primate brain. That's the part of the brain that controls our higher functions such as logical thinking. The primate brain, by the way, being the youngest, is also the weakest brain of all. So leading with your head means appealing to the primate brain, to the logical part of our brain. However, that is the weakest way to connect with people. And the reason is that as human beings, we are emotional creatures. If we didn't have emotions, then every single decision would have no weightage and would be equal. It would be difficult for us to choose one path over the other because it will make no difference. It is our emotions that adds weightage to our decisions, which allow us to have preferences. So ever wonder why some leaders are able to speak to the emotions in the room and rally the people around them? You have to connect to people at an emotional level. And then what happens is that we then apply our logic to the feelings that we get. And so that's another reason why if you want people to follow you, you need to lead with your head and heart. Leadership is a combination of traits, and there's no one way to lead. It really depends on the situation involved, and you have to mediate between your head and your heart in order to get appropriate outcomes. I've worked with leaders who are really amazing when it comes to achieving results, but they struggle to connect with the teams that they lead. You need to understand the link between the well-being of your team and how connected you are with them to the performance and the outcome that they achieve. If you only lead with your head, then it's tempting to look at the relationship with your team in terms of the financial rewards, how luxurious their office is, or what other perks that they can get from you. Now, that's only one part of the leadership equation. The other part of the leadership equation is to have the emotional intelligence to understand the impact of your leadership through the eyes of those who follow you. What does your team want? Why do they want it? How do they want it? This requires empathy and compassion and other emotional intelligence skills which you can learn. It is your emotional intelligence which allows you to lead with your head and your heart. As people, we are multifaceted creatures. We are intellectual and we are also emotional. In order for you to connect with them and to lead them, you have to lead with your head and your heart, and that requires you to develop your emotional intelligence. If you like the content that you see so far, make sure you hit a like, subscribe, and leave a comment in this video. It helps me to grow the channel. Thanks. So in order to be a leader that others are willing to follow, let's go through again the 7 reasons why you should lead with your head and heart. When you want to manage resources, you can lead with your head. When you want to lead people, it requires that you connect and influence them. That requires you to lead with your heart, guided by your head. As a leader, you are a unique individual with your own personal values, strengths, and personality. And that allows you to approach leadership in a way that makes sense to you and only you. By having clarity on who you are, you will have a better understanding of your own leadership and how that affects the people around you. This way, you can then work on the areas that you can improve when it comes to leading with your head and heart. When you have greater clarity on who you are in terms of your personal values, your strengths, and your personality, this then allows others to see you as leading authentically and consistently in a wide range of situations. Developing others does not just require a lead with head approach with the occasional workshop, seminar, mandatory training courses, or even online courses. In order to truly develop people, it has to be a continuous process. You need to lead with your heart because you need to care about the career development of others and to provide that continuous development on a day-to-day basis. One thing I understand is that your leadership is a collaboration between your head and your heart. When it comes to dealing with the situations involved, you tend to lead with your head in terms of asking the what, where, and when. However, in order to go deeper, ask those insightful questions and listen to what people have to say. You have to lead with your heart and find out the how and why. And it is this combination and mediating between them that will allow you to successfully achieve outcomes in a range of situations. People are emotional creatures. We add emotions to the decisions that we have to make, and then we do a logic check with it. So if you want others to follow you, you need to be able to appeal to the emotional level of people as well as lead them to achieve success. Due to a wide range of situations that you are going to face, you have to mediate between your head and your heart in order to achieve successful outcomes. And that means that when you're having conversations, you need to be able to sense when to be more logical or when to speak to the emotions in the room. And that requires your emotional intelligence, which is another reason to lead with your head and heart. So in researching to answer this question, I noticed 3 things that you will want to take note of. Number 1, leading others requires you to influence. And that influence is going to depend on the strength of the relationships you have. You can't build relationships purely on intellect alone. And this means that even if you are someone who prefers to be rational and logical all the time, you have to recognize that leadership requires you to lead with your head and heart. You have to connect with people in order to influence them and to get them to do the work that produces the results that you need as a leader. Number 2, so if we recognize that leadership requires you to lead with your head and your heart, then you need to know how is your leadership approach, which means you need to get clarity on your personal values, your strengths, and your personality. If you are more of a lead with head sort of a person, then what can you do to connect more with your heart and vice versa? This is essential because leadership situations and the people involved are dynamic. You cannot take an either intellectual or an emotional approach to resolving those situations because not everyone will respond in the same way. You need to use both. And a lot of it is going to be dependent on how you lead. Number 3, the most critical piece is really your emotional intelligence. When you are leading people, not only are you leading them to their success, you also have to address at times the emotions in the room. When you speak to someone, you need to be able to speak to their situation, and that requires emotional intelligence. And I'll add that emotional intelligence is important. The sensitivity of that emotional intelligence is even more so. So if you're someone who is very sensitive, then you need to tell yourself not to read too much into every single word, action, or decision that someone else does. Inversely, if you're someone who is not very sensitive when it comes to their emotional intelligence, then perhaps you need to work on being more sensitive. And one way to do that is to get feedback from trusted sources on how you perform as a leader on an emotional intelligence level. So you may have seen me list a couple of leadership traits throughout this video. Those leadership traits are from my first-time leadership research where I interviewed leaders from all over the world in order to understand what leadership is. If you want to find out more about what leadership is, I have it in my book, First Time Leadership. There's a link in the description below. Check it out. So that's pretty much it. I hope these 7 reasons are good enough for you to start to lead with your head and heart. In any case, my name is Daniel Lee from First Time Leadership. I look forward to speaking with you soon.